Indian accounting standards, that is, and IFRS and the Indian GAAP. These are various accounting standards which probably can be looked at with regard to financial presentation of financial statements, inventory primary literature, standards, statement of cash flows, and so on and so forth. Accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates and other primary literature, events after the reporting period, and income tax. There are competitions which are visible clearly, and there are differences between the three of them. Property, plant and equipment, events after reporting period, differences in Indian GAAP and Indian accounting standard, and not the word Indian with the US GAAP, and Indian accounting standard and IFRS. Indian accounting standard is mostly IFRS compliant for most accounting standards except for Indian accounting standard 101 on first time adoption of Indian accounting standards, as can be seen from the above table comparison of accounting standards. Issue of GAAP reconciliation with Indian accounting standards include some of these accounting standards which have serious implications. Indian accounting standard 115, revenue recognition from contracts with customers, point in time or over a period of time. And there are several differences of this type. I don't need to really go in those details at this stage. Of course, the challenges which are required for implementation of IFRS are training and education, legal and regulatory consideration, taxation, fair value measurement. There is an overview of the conversion process of Indian accounting standards. Now I am coming to the non-conformist view. This is the conforming part of the view, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to the non-conforming view, of course, as I said, there are a few questions which arise. One of the important questions which arises is, should India adopt IFRS as it is presented, or GAAP, or its own Indian accounting standards? There is not much choice with companies. Whatever the government, regulatory authorities decides, they have to follow. The second aspect, the second question which arises is, should we adopt a financial reporting system which is appropriate, and after analyzing its efficacy, efficiency and suitability in a given situation in India? It is well recognized fact that we in India most often blindly adopting practices and systems in life, and also in management and financial reporting, particularly from our colonial masters and America. The examples are the course curricula which is being adopted for most of the management courses, accounting courses and other subjects in the country. There are others as well. For instance, the poor of America and Europe wear torn jeans, patched jeans, and in India the most fashionable, the rich and even the actors and actresses have adopted those torn jeans as a matter of fashion. Another important aspect, there are several other things. For India, for instance, we continue to present the union budget at 5 o'clock because this was decided by our colonial masters before independence. 5 o'clock was not the suitable time. It was only in 1998, after I wrote an article which was published in Economic Times, that India should present its union budget at 11 o'clock because people of the country deserve to know what would be the implications of the union budget on their incomes, on their assets, on their taxation and so on and so forth during the day, and have a right to have a comfortable sleep. Because if you present the budget at 5 and finish it at 7, by the time everything is closed and people have sleepless nights, it becomes extended day almost for everybody. And fortunately, the government of India accepted, and from 1998 they presented the union budget at 11 o'clock. Now this was a practice which was our colonial master decided, because 5 o'clock in India means 11:30 in England, and the Viceroy of India was an employee of the state secretary, or was supposed to report to the state secretary in Britain, and therefore when he gives the final say, that would be done. Of course, I did give economic logic in order to support my view that why should it be presented and not only the historical view. There are various other factors where we find that we just adopt. The country's BJP or the country's political party, which has always been harping on Swadeshi and Swadeshi for everything, and if you find it's been hiring people to man most important policy decision making. I don't want to name, probably you know all that. Some of them are even foreigners with Indian origin and are serving in some of the most important policy making bodies in this country. Now gentlemen, this is like our obsession for foreigners, while at the same time, if you really look at it, we find in NATO more than 45% scientists are Indians. 50% of the doctors in the United States of America are doing extremely well. There are many universities where deans are with Indian origin. There are many countries where Indians are holding ministerial positions and even have served in the Prime Minister or the CEO of the country. And even then, we are still obsessed with the fact that harping on Swadeshi, we invite foreigners and people of Indian origin to man our most important policy and decision-making bodies. I am not in favor of all that. I must say, anything which is being promoted anywhere in the world needs to be tuned to what is required in our country. Our domestic companies, what will be the cost of using IFRS for those countries. Similarly, I must say, when you adopt a foreign policy of financial reporting, the question which arises is, what is its cost to the people? What disclosures, inter-firm comparisons, inter-industry comparisons, inter-time comparisons, will they be distorted if you adopt a newer system for reporting? That is a very important question. Over the years, centuries-old system which has been adopted and continued for reporting in India, should it be destroyed and distorted altogether? That's a very simple question which needs to be answered. Similarly, can the firms, what benefits will the firms draw? Those who have no international dealings at all. That's an important issue. I can understand India has very rightly adopted that beyond a particular level of capital, you need to adopt IFRS, etc. Well, similarly, I would ask another question, and I will come to that. The question which arises is, after we find that these systems for financial reporting have been devised, debated, confirmed, and adopted by many countries. My question is, why scams? Why financial crisis of 2008? Why financial crisis of 2011? Why Bearing Bank failed? Why Arthur and Anderson, one of the most celebrated auditing and consulting firms, almost got closed because it was involved with scams? Then what is the purpose of all these systems which we have designed and have not served a very useful purpose? Now the questions which arise is, then what can possibly be done? And I will come to that a little later, ladies and gentlemen. The question which arises is for us of accounting policies. I will give you several examples. Take the case of inventories. You, under IFRS, GAAP and Indian accounting standards, you say Indian inventory is to be shown in a particular fashion. Look at the balance sheet of BHEL. They will classify inventories into four components: raw materials, work in products, finished products, and the works being done at site. Each one of them can be classified in a different way depending upon how does it suit the company in terms of making its income statement as well as is showing its value of assets. I remember about a small anecdote I like to share with you. In America, a controller of finance was to be selected. He was asked a question. Out of a few who were screened, 5 of them were screened. Each one of them was holding CPA with 35 years of experience, holding a controller of finance position in other companies. But this company was giving much more, salary and compensation. Each one of them was extremely competent. The chairman only asked each one of them only one question: what does 2 plus 2 make? Each one of the first 4 answered. First 4 candidates had 4. And chairman said, "Thank you, gentlemen. If we need your services, we'll get back to you." The 5th one came. He was asked the same question. And what did he say? "What does Mr. Chairman want 2 plus 2 to be? It will make exactly that." Now, what does that mean? As a matter of fact, that is the whole truth of financial reporting. What does Mr. Chairman want 2 plus 2 to be? How much income do you want to be shown in a given year? How much assets do you want to be shown in a given year? There is a sequential effect. There are standards. There are policies. There are, in a sequential fashion, one can go back and see whether there are transactions which have been carried out or not. But still then, how can you make 2 plus 2 to be different from 4? That is the way accounting policy, notes to accounts, interpretations to various policies, reading in between the lines probably tells us to do that. I give you one example. 1967-68, Delhi Cloth and General Mills, known as DCM, adopted a practice following some of the American companies adopting that practice prior to that, 1967. What they did with regard to depreciation? The Income Tax Act stated that the depreciation is to be charged at a given rate by the written down value method. They were continuing to do that ever since they started that company. The company was finding it a little difficult because there was a heavy recession in textile units in 66-67 onwards till almost a decade. A very strong company called Binny Company of Madras even failed. Over 130,000 units were closed, textile units were closed in India because of the failure of textile units, and National Textile Corporation was formed. DCM, which was a textile company, was also struggling. They wanted to protect themselves. What did they do? They inserted one small clause in accounting policy. What was that clause? We have changed the method of charging depreciation from written down value to the straight line method. The moment you do it, a triangular form of amount of excess depreciation charged in the previous years was transferred to general reserves. The general reserves was used to issue bonus shares. Bonus shares were used to play with the perceptions of the people, and the company in the meantime took 2 years to do the whole thing, exercise, promoted a large number of other companies. They required to promote other companies only about 20% of the total funding for all those companies, because 80% was supposed to be they were getting from the financial institutions. And they could raise large amount of funds playing with the perceptions of the people, stating that the company is declaring bonus shares, so it's so profitable in nature. This was not done by them alone. This was done in the United States of America before that. Look at the case of Satyam. What is the truth about Satyam? The truth is that financial disclosures which were wrongfully done and certified by the chartered accountants using all these three methods, GAAP, IFRS and Indian accounting standards. Look at the case of Rashtriya Sahara. The chartered accountants and some of the advisors, accounting advisors, suggested them, and the gentleman who is the owner of Sahara is in jail for the last more than 6 months just because they flouted. There was nothing wrong with regard to the presentation of the financial statements. But what was wrong with the interpretation and what is written in the accounting policies? Accounting policies and the notes to accounts is in a big way misused by most companies and in their own way. When you talk about incorporating uncertainty, when you talk about assessment, when you talk about interpretations and assumptions, as a matter of fact, assumptions is one of the most dangerous things. Assume something and proceed. Assume 5 people can build up this building in 1 month and the building is constructed in 1 month. That assumption, we begin with mathematics in school, in the childhood. Assuming 5 workers can do this work in 1 day, how many people will do this work in half a day? Now that is a kind of very serious assumption. In accounting also, these assumptions which are being used, of course, we say use these assumptions. Interpretations very difficult. What is the truth? How will you really present the truth? Stakeholders deserve to know the truth. Government is one of the stakeholders. Shareholders are stakeholders. Creditors are stakeholders. Bankers are stakeholders. They deserve to know the truth. Where will the truth come from? The truth will come from the attitude of the people. There need to be less greed for generating wealth. Well, friends, I think I will only, in terms of truth, I will say this is a very complex world. And in this complex world, where incomes, expenditures, assets and liabilities of some companies spreading their wings globally are bigger than incomes, assets and liabilities of even some of the countries of the world, standardization is as essential and as well as, no, thank you very much, as well as the very existence of an organization and its financial reporting. The second, I must say, king does not want to lose its control. Who are the modern kings? When British had to leave the countries where they were ruling, it was stated, oh, the sun never sets in Britain, British kingdom. They created something called Commonwealth. And all those countries who were under the control of British Queen, they became part of the Commonwealth. The king still does not want to lose its control. The king here is, of course, IFRS. The king also here is the ruling governments. King is also the regulatory bodies like in India, SEBI or Reserve Bank of India and the Income Tax Department. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fact. They don't want to rule. They want maximum disclosure. Kautilya, the Chanakya said, if you really want to live peacefully and happily, don't disclose your incomes. But I will not support what Chanakya said in 327 BC because he said there is a danger for robbers, dacoits, and he said the state to loot you. And therefore, you should not disclose everything. But in the modern complex world where somebody else is managing your affairs and the corporations are bigger than even some of the countries in terms of their incomes, you need to really disclose, and stakeholders are spread globally. And as a matter of fact, who are the people who tell them how to do things, how to misinterpret, how to reveal less, how to disclose less? And they disclose everything but conceal the vitals. The focus of those who make presentations, irrespective of whether it is under IFRS, whether it is under Indian accounting standards or under US GAAP, the focus is reveal everything but conceal the vitals. And it is these vitals which are more important than everything else which is revealed in financial reporting. Another important aspect I would say that those who tell you, who are supposed to be regulator, those who want to tell you, report this, report this, report this, use this method, they are the people who tell you, don't reveal this, set it aside, make this assumption. And as a matter of fact, how do you control them? It is some of those who are experts in this direction only suggest how to disclose less or conceal vitals. As I said, stakeholders always want maximum disclosures. Companies always want list disclosures. I remember there was an article written way back in 1973-74 by one Baruch. Aggregation, in loss of information through aggregation of items in financial statements. I did develop a measure, a model, and it was published in Journal of Indian Accounting Standard, Indian Journal of Accounting in 1976. The loss of information through aggregation in order to save money in terms of printing of financial statements. Well, that is probably could have been used. Another question which I think I would like to raise is, can standardization beat the ingenuity of the brain of unscrupulous organizations, unscrupulous persons? How do we do that? I think that is something which is probably a bigger challenge for all those who design standards. Another question which arises, can standardization bring about changes in the attitude of the people to present the true and fair view of the state of affairs of a company in terms of financial sense? There was a time prior to 1947-48, the word in terms of audit was being used stating true and correct. This was replaced in 1949, true and fair, because it was considered it is not possible to present a true and correct state of affairs. How can we really lead, if not necessarily true and correct, nearly to true and correct situation? I think that is a challenge before us. Now, of course, I must say a good education, values and ethics imbibed in people right from childhood and through education, through the portals, through the temples of education, probably can lead people to adopt a positive attitude, to be honest as far as possible in terms of financial disclosures. Of course, law in itself cannot really help. And I must say that there are different kind of trends followed. And I must say Dr. Elizabeth Gordon has presented very well the various trends and challenges which lie before the IFRS. Now I think I have already presented to you, ladies and gentlemen, not taking long. I have taken my own 35 minutes which was allotted to me, and I should not take longer than that. But I will certainly say that this is the overview of Indian accounting standards conversion process which is likely to be taking place. And I think you have, with this I would close and say, ladies and gentlemen, certainly we need a system wherein proper reporting is being done and at an international level. But I am with a rider. It is only good for those companies who are operating internationally. Those who are operating domestically, small size companies, SMEs, medium state enterprises, I think it would be an unnecessary cost to insist that you follow IFRS or even Indian accounting standards. because what is needed is let them function, their size, they are sole proprietorships, they are partnerships, and they are small private limited companies. For them to afford that kind of cost would be a difficult chance. I am, despite my views on the fact where I said non-conformist views as well as conformist views and the truth of the whole state of affairs, I must say there is a need to follow and adopting standardization of financial reporting. And international financial reporting is one such mechanism where that can be adopted. Thank you very much.